Why are you not setting the right goals for your podcast? Why wasn't I setting the right goals for my podcast for so many years? That is the question that I'm going to try and answer today here on the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show that brings you podcast education, industry insights, and straight talking reaction to podcasting news. I'm your host, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy, and CEO and co-founder here at Rebel Base Media, the podcast tech company that creates the Podcast Success Academy, podcast websites, productivity, Rebel Base Studios, and Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host, where you can host and start multiple shows for one simple price. And of course, transfer an existing podcast in completely for free. So go ahead, give Captivate a whirl for 7 days completely free at Captivate.fm. So, podcast goal setting sounds super easy, right? You just stick a really high download number down on a piece of paper and you try to hit it. That sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah, surely that's just what you do. Wrong. That's not what you do. Podcasting is about gradual growth and focusing on goals that aren't just download oriented. So I'm going to dig into that in 1 second. But I'm going to spend just a minute just telling you a little bit about AWeber. The team at AWeber are still providing me and my team with amazing email marketing support so that we can reach out to you. It's highly likely that you saw this episode in an email that I sent you today. Very, very likely that you've seen that land in your inbox. And if that is the case, you need to know that is powered by AWeber. They're the best in the business. They've been doing it for 20 years and they help me to connect with you, and they can do the same for you. And they're going to give you 90 days completely free. 90 days. That's a heck of a long time to use AWeber for free. Go and try it out now. markasquith.com/AWeber. All right. Like I said, podcasting is about gradual growth and focusing on goals that aren't just download oriented. And it's really easy for me to say that. But actually, to you listening, you're running your podcast, you've got your recording set up, you're in a niche, you're thinking, what the heck do I need to do? Well, it really isn't as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy as just sticking a really high download number down on paper and trying to hit it. Because if you do that, you're not going to really have that much strategy. You're going to run out of things to try very, very quickly, just like any marketing plan. If I'm here running Rebel Base Media, and here at Rebel Base Media, we've got various different revenue centers. We've got podcast websites, we've got Captivate.fm, we've got the Podcast Success Academy, we've got the studio, we've got our consulting, our very local agency-based work that we do with people to help them create branded podcasts. Imagine if I just said to the team, look, team, we need to earn this amount of revenue per year. And that was it. It wouldn't work. You'd think I was crazy if I had that plan. Because it's too broad, it's too open, it's too kind of, I hate this phrase, but it's too blue sky. It's too, it's too high level. So why do people in podcasting do something similar if we wouldn't do it in business? Because numbers are numbers. To grow the numbers, tactics that work in business work in podcasting. Marketing exists. And ultimately, you cannot say to yourself, I want 10,000 downloads a month, I want 5,000, I want 50,000, I want 100,000. We see this so many times with podcasters that have been around forever, that have built up personal brands that are not in podcasting. So some of the entrepreneurial podcasts out there, those guys are not necessarily podcasting to be a podcaster. They're podcasting to sell stuff via their personal brands. And that is very often why their mass market appeal is very, very inflated compared to a fishing podcast or compared to a football podcast or a gaming podcast. It's a very different offer. So when we're seeing these things out there, my podcast from say an entrepreneur online or from a big podcaster online, my show's been downloaded 11 million times. Like, well, that's great. That really is good stuff. But that's just marketing. And of course, that's the thing that you are going to say. It's brand recognition. It's a huge piece of testimony. Of course, it is social proof. But if you've got a brand new show, that ain't going to help you. So when it comes to goal setting for your podcast, here's what you need to do. You need to say, right, actually, what is the goal of this podcast overall? Is it to build a network of people? Is it to earn money? Is it to build a community online? Is it to build a community offline, to sell courses, to sell merchandise, to make money from Patreon, to get sponsors? Which one of those is the single most important goal? All right. And then which other ones are potentially secondary and tertiary goals? As an example of that, you might say, right, I want to make $5,000 or £5,000 per month through Patreon by the end of next year. And as a secondary goal, it'd be nice to have 2,000 people in my online community and 50 people turning up to my meetups every month. All right. Very, very clear, very realistic goals. And then what you need to do is you need to work back, well, actually, how am I going to do that? What do my downloads need to be? Well, notice that those goals weren't CPM, cost per meal, cost per 1,000 downloads oriented. They weren't sponsor oriented. So if you want to earn $5,000 a month or £5,000 a month through your podcast, you need a product range on Patreon, for example, that allows you to get to that realistically. And you need to say, well, actually, do you know what? If I got to, say, 500 downloads per episode, could I convert 10, 20, 30, 40% of those monthly over the course of the next 18 months to start to generate that 5K recurring revenue? If I could, all I need to do is focus on generating those 500 listens per episode, having a Patreon setup that is very clear and simple that allows me to get to that, and then marketing the backside out of my show to get to those numbers and making the call to action really, really clear. So the goal is not to get 10,000 downloads. I know people that honestly get 3-figure downloads, mid 3-figure downloads, and earn an exceptional living through their podcast because they're doing it like this, all right? So the reason I want to talk about this today is because, again, I'm seeing so many people be disenchanted with low download numbers. It doesn't matter what your download numbers are as long as your goals are mapped to them, or vice versa. If your goals are lofty and your downloads aren't there, you have to put the infrastructure in place, which means that when you do get the downloads, Patreon set up, sponsorship forms are set up, all of the infrastructure is there so that when the people do come, you have the systems ready to go. And then all you need to do is focus on marketing. Like I said last week, don't start creating more content. Take one episode a week and hammer the marketing. Hammer it, all right? We are going to dig into more tactical stuff when it comes to marketing. Don't worry, I'm going to get a little bit more specific than this. But for now, I want you to understand that your goals have got to be realistic, and they can't just be download-oriented. It's pointless. Downloads are vanity metrics unless you are selling CPM sponsorships. And even then, you've got to have pretty high downloads to get anything worthwhile back, all right? Be realistic about what you want to achieve. And there are so many ways to monetize. That's something that we're working on helping you with in the Podcast Success Academy, helping you get to 100 downloads per episode and 500 downloads per episode, and then how to monetize that to get to your first $100 per month, then your first $500 per month. That is where it's at, okay? So just be mindful of that. It's something that worries me, that I see so many people launch and get disenchanted, all right? You have to set realistic goals, and then you have to work back from the lofty goals that you set. It's not to say that they can't be ambitious and high, but they've got to be attainable, smart, okay? Smart objectives, specific, measurable, attainable, results-driven, and time-based, okay? Smart objectives, that's where it's at. So thank you so much for joining me here on the Podcast Accelerator. Please remember to tell all your podcasting friends that the show is available to listen to for free in any app that supports podcasts. And if you're wondering what the best next step to take for your own show is, whether you're a new or a veteran podcaster, go ahead and take our short 5-minute survey where I'm going to help you to diagnose and solve the main issue holding your show and your podcast growth back. Plus, I'm going to give you access to our free, hyper-vibrant Podcast Rebellion community, some weekly free group coaching from myself and the expert podcasters here at Rebel Base Media. I'm going to give you access to our insider-only actionable emails, and plus a free invitation to the Podcast Success Academy. So go ahead and invest 5 minutes now to grow your podcast by heading to rebelbasemedia.io/grow. And until next time, thanks for joining me. And never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.